Alrighty boys, so I'm going to explain how the new Cast on Crit Ice Nova budget version works, and then we're probably going to go over just a little bit about pricing and what this character is for. So obviously, like usual, it's an all-rounder. I don't really want it to specialize in bossing or mapping or anything like that. It's kind of just a character I want to play from the start of the league to the end of the league, make money with, and then if I want to min-max, I want to go further, I play pretty much something else, or I work out a new version of this. But this is the new version of Cast on Crit Ice Nova. It works fantastic at a budget. There is just a few problems, and obviously, okay, so all Cast on Crit builds, we got 3 problems to start with, and then we'll get into offense and defense, right? First one, accuracy. So basically, we are using a juiced up precision. There it is. Juiced up precision, right? I have a level 21 precision. I can't even remember where I actually put it. Give me a second. There it is. Level 21 precision, right? Gets us a bunch of accuracy. Then we have 2 accuracy rolls at our rings. And then basically like maybe a little bit of a effect on the tree somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. Go over the POB, it'll show you. But basically that gives us 100% accuracy. Somewhere here, it'll show us. Alright, so 100% chance to hit just off basically 2 accuracy rolls. They don't have to be max, but I would always get tier 1s on the rings. And then a juiced up precision, right? Not a big deal. That's how you fix accuracy. 1 problem down. Next problem is going to be obviously crit. You've got to get 2 forms of crit, so attack crit and spell crit. This is where it gets fun, right? So basically, how we are getting our crit cap cheaply and effectively, right, is through brittle ground, right? So if anyone that doesn't know what brittle ground is, basically it's like dropping base crit on the ground. So you drop this thing down, right, and it says right there we've got like 5.9% or whatever. Right, so all it is as we're walking, these little blue things spawn, or as we're spinning, they also spawn, right? And they drop brittle ground. That thing there is basically giving me, at default, 2% base crit. Turns out, though, it scales, right, with increased effect of non-damaging ailments, right? If you get enough of this, like you can get these through anywhere, but basically we choose to get it through 2 pieces of gear if we can, and again, you can get rid of it later. So I've got a fractured one there. You don't need that in the beginner version. You can just self-craft these on at 30% on both your boots and on your amulet. And then basically, what is it? Then you get increased effective non-damaging ailments through your crit ascendancy. So there should be one here. Actually, I don't even have it taken. Sorry, because we don't need the one from there. It's over here, right? So you get 40% increased over here as well. It's on the tree. You guys will find this. And then the rest of it comes from the cluster jewels, right? We have a thing called Astonishing Affliction, an Inspired Oppression. Increased effect there, increased effect here. And then in the budget version, you can get another one here to reach 6% quite easily without even needing perfect gear, right? So our gear isn't perfect. We had to make this character up on the fly. But basically, it's more than enough to reach 6% brittle. And what that does, right, is that adds to both of your crits. It adds to base crit. CoC Nova has a default crit of, I should be there somewhere, 6%. And then you're adding another 6 on, giving you 12% base crit to start all of your crit chance at. Same thing with the weapon. The weapon only has a base crit of, so your general crit strike, 5.5. Then it's obviously 11.5, right? So that's doubling your effective base crit, and then it works out from there. But that's actually, all that alone is not enough to actually reach your crit cap, right? So what happens is we use a thing called a Precision Sublime Vision, which gives you 25% more critical strike chance while affected by precision, which is our only aura, right? The downside of that is you only get to use 1 aura. Give me a sec. There it is, right? Heralds don't count as auras, nor does Blood and Sand, and nor does Arctic Armor, but I just too lazy to use it personally. But it's fine, right? We've got it there if I ever need it, but I won't. On top of all this, right, we also have Power Charge generation. So when you get the Power Charge, you get the Sublime Vision, and the precision and stuff like that. You get all these auras, you get everything combined together, right? You basically reach your crit cap without any need for flask, right? So that's how you take care of all your crit and accuracy needs so far. Then the final thing you need to work out, obviously, is your trigger rate. As usual, actually no, probably not as usual. In a budget version, we normally start at the 14% cooldown recovery breakpoint. Look, I'll simplify this if you're a new player. I might make a video more in depth about this later if this one goes good, but basically all you need to know, right, is that you just need 52% cooldown recovery. We get that through a level 5 cast on crit, right? A level 5 cast on crit gives you 31. Put this on a calculator for you so you can work it out, right? So basically we get 31 from that. So you need a level 5 cast on crit. I get 16 on the belt. down here, right? So just this is the veiled one, but obviously just any tier 1 will get you there, right? So plus 16. And then you'll see that you're about 5 short. You can actually just get that on your implicits. So that's why we have the 5% cooldown recovery, right? So if you wanted to, that's the lowest tier, by the way. That's the absolute lowest tier. If you wanted to, what you can do is obviously you can get a higher tier of that, and then you don't need as good a roll on your belt. So you can actually get it down to, I think like it goes up like 8% or something, which means you can get like a 14% or a 13% roll. But all you're trying to do, right, is reach this number here. As soon as you've got 52% cooldown recovery, the build pretty much does itself, actually. So like my trigger rate's 9, and that's with like a low attack speed on these, right? This is in the budget version as well, and I believe all we have is frenzy charge generation. And later on, obviously, we get like a lot more, but basically this is not max rolled everywhere. You get attack speed all over the place. You don't really need any of this, but this is the beginner version. It's only level, I say that, level 95. It's actually quite good. But anyway, this is the beginner version. All right, so that solves the big 3, okay? So basically you got your accuracy, got your attack speed, breakpoint, and you got your crit cap. Now you can actually start playing around with the offense and defense. And the first thing I'm going to mention, right, is this jewel right here creates a world of headaches for you, because as you'll notice, you know, in high-end versions, we're trying to scale as many auras as possible. We need so many different things. We need utility, which is why like a mage blood's so strong. Having all these different auras is so strong. So on a budget version, by using this sublime vision, right, because it gives you 25% more critical, but it only allows you to use precision as your one aura, basically you're sort of stuck in a spot where it's like, okay, well, how do I get evasion, right? So like if you just grab evasion, like from a flask, you actually basically get nothing. So if it shows you my evasion rating somewhere, there it is, right? It's like 1,300. You use this with a flask, you actually don't really get much evasion at all. You'll probably notice that. So it's like, that's kind of weak. Like, that's not really a very good defensive layer. And the reason is because normally you would pair this, right? You would pair this with your aura on top of it. So like a grace. Without a grace, you actually don't get much bang for your buck when it comes to a granite flask or any of these things, which is why I say these are, you know, even when you combine these, you end up with a very average amount of evasion. We do use this in the budget version before you go to a Progenesis, but basically I find it to be not very necessary, and I would almost skip this step entirely, right? Like I pretty much almost instantaneously recommend going for give me a sec, there it is, right? Almost going for the trader immediately and just having permanent flask. You're not going to get much value out of it. So you're probably wondering, okay, so how do I get my defenses on this build then? If I've got no evasion, no block, no nothing, like how do I deal with physical? How do I deal with elemental? And how am I going to deal with chaos? It's actually all solved on one item. Doppelgangers, guys. Like almost immediately off the back. If you read this thing, it says 40% less physical and chaos damage taken. So there goes majority of physical. This is flat physical, by the way. But there goes a lot of the physical damage you're going to take, and there goes a lot of the chaos damage you're going to take. Kind of leaving you with, okay, well now how do you deal with elemental damage? Well, aside from a big EHP pool, right? Like we have a lot of life, more than enough for like basic mapping and basic bossing. We basically have the Bastion of Elements, which gives us the Primal Aegis, giving us an additional, what is this thing? I think it's like 3,000? Yeah, like 3,000 plus boosted Primal Aegis, right? So we're basically at like 8k plus HP when it comes to getting hit from Elemental. Now it is a buff and it does go down for about 5 seconds every now and then. If you're cognizant of it, it's not really a big deal, but basically that's your Elemental extra damage, that's your physical extra damage, and that's obviously your chaos extra damage. Like you don't really take too much. I also really recommend getting your Pantheon early on. We currently have this off. But basically, you grab this Pantheon here for reduced damage taken over time. I don't have it because I'm lazy. It's actually a mistake, but whatever. Point is, that's going to take care of like the 3 big elements. And you're probably thinking, yeah, like 40% doesn't seem like a lot. Like, it's actually quite big, but we're not done yet with the physical, right? So we also take Smashing Strikes, which pretty much works as we're going. So I'll also show you this. So with Smashing Strikes, we're able to either maintain 4 endurance charges for an additional 16% reduction, right? So that's on top of our already 40, which basically gives us 56% reduction, which is good. Or we get hit, right? And then we get an extra long Immortal Call, possibly with endurance charges up as well. And basically that will allow us to be at like 60% reduction for physical at all times, which is really good. You want that, and reduced elemental damage taken as well. So you either have one of these 2 buffs up at all times, and it kind of just ping-pongs between them. We use an increased duration on that just to make it last a bit longer, but either way, you're protected quite heavily from physical and from elemental damage. you have some layers there, and it actually works out quite well. So in addition to those defenses, we also want to keep in mind that basically we are playing a cold character here. My Vortex alone can actually clean up mobs, you know what I mean? We have enough damage there. So your other defensive layer is the fact that you are playing a cold character with a tremendous amount of damage. We're trying to keep up our movement speed as much as possible, so we basically have a permanent onslaught there, you can see. We always have up our Arcane Surge, just for extra damage and just extra quality of life. And then pretty much mapping looks something, you know, like what we're doing here, where I'm just kind of just running through the map. Everything's getting frozen. If it's about to attack me, we just... you want to blink into packs, by the way, guys. It's like a little bit of a gameplay tip. Like, the only problem I've ever had with Cyclone is the fact that it takes you a while to get close to your enemy, which is why I said the only thing you want to keep up, basically, is movement speed, right? And obviously, a Frost Blink helps with that. You can just jump into the pact. You see another pack, you just jump straight into it. And the size of the CoC Nova explosion is actually massive enough to pretty much just do all the work for us. And on top of that, we're just not really going to die. We also have life gain on hit with spells, which makes it, you know, ridiculously good. We're just going to skip that for a second. And so life gain on hit with each spells is, I want to say, oh sorry, it's this one. It's basically mandatory. I self-crafted these rings, and I'll probably, maybe, if people have enough interest, I'll show you how to do these. Like, these are incredibly cheap what they are. I'm sure they'll go up in price, but basically they make it really easy. And then your damage on bosses should just be like ridiculously good. So that was like that was an extra crit turbocharged boss. I don't even think he got a swing off there. I wasn't really paying too much attention, but that's what you're looking for with bosses, man, where like they're frozen, they're slowed. With the increased effect of non-damaging ailments, you're at 30% chill at all times. It is really effective. Alright, now before I get ahead of myself here, there is one mechanic I absolutely need to explain to people, because I see this mistake made all the time, and we have people doing creeping frost and stuff like that, and they don't realize why every single Ice Nova character mandatory runs a cost breeze, okay? So I've seen this mistake made a few times where people don't understand the doubling up here, but essentially what it is the reason why every single cast on crit Ice Nova character runs one cost breeze is for this mandatory setup of a Frost Bomb and a Frostbolt GMP, right? Or sometimes they get rid of it and they can put another damage link there. But the point is, right, is basically when you're doing your Ice Nova like normal, right, you only get one cast of it, one pretty decent damage. If you read the gem, right, of Ice Nova, it says it can expand from up to 2 Frostbolt projectiles. This shotgun, so in effect, what it actually is, right, is, oops, sorry. Why is it not letting me cut? Oh, sorry, pressing the wrong button, that's why. All right, so as these go out, see how you get 2 explosions there? You can kind of very clearly see 1, 2. 1, 2. And when they get far enough away or they fade, right, you only get 1 Ice Nova. So it literally doubles your damage to have a Frostbolt projectile out. So one of the big drawbacks of this, right, is when people don't do their links correctly, they don't put it with a Frost Bomb. A Frost Bomb has an internal cooldown, right, that can't be overcome, which is, where is it? I can't remember where it says, right, but this thing's got a cooldown. And what you want is Frostbolt projectiles to be near you. If your Frostbolts get too far away, right, as you can kind of imagine you're spinning like this, and my Frostbolt projectile's over here, I'm not casting them. Or they're not casting them near them. So I'm trying to get my Frostbolt, or my Ice Nova, right, to appear right on top of me. Like so. So I need my Frostbolts, right, to be here on top of me, like that, so that I'm killing the mobs that are right near me, right? That's how I want it to be. If I'm doing this, and I'm spinning, and then I press it, right? Sorry, failed it there, but you get the idea, right? Which is, oh, my Ice Novas are behind me, and the mob that I'm trying to kill is in front of me. That allows that monster to literally destroy me if I don't have enough Frostbolt projectiles. So this is a very important defensive mechanic, where it's basically what you want to happen, right, is your Frost Bomb to be laid down and on cooldown, so that the alternating spell cast from the Cost Breeze doesn't get diluted, basically. Alright, so you just want as many Frostbolt projectiles as possible, so you want Frostbolts technically on its own. The only way to do that is to pair it with a Frost Bomb. This initial setup is mandatory for decent cast on crit damage. Alright guys, so I'm gonna quickly go over this. So this will just be basically, we've already explained how it works, how the core of the character works and stuff like that. I just want to quickly run over basically all the gear pieces and just explain to you why they're mandatory. Obviously cost breeze, right? I've just finished explaining it. This gives us our setup. It allows us to do a Frostbite curse at full effect. Wow, I didn't even have quality on that. Anyway, it gives us extra Ice Novas, which gives us more chance to freeze, which obviously makes our Heat Shiver more effective. So pure damage, generates our Frenzy charges for us. We get Elemental Pen because Crit Multi does nothing for us when we're using a Malagaros. Malagaros is used to give us a cheap amount of good damage and get us Dex, attack speed, extra crit, all things we need. I got an extra life roll on these. This is 20C, gives us an extra frenzy charge. Again, these are insanely cheap for the value they offer, and obviously I don't dictate prices, they can change after this, but essentially these were like 1 to 2 divines each. They can be more expensive, obviously, especially when people work out how good they are, but they give us a frenzy charge generation, basically damage slots, right? So these two are pure damage and basically utility. Mandatory. You cannot beat these as far as like getting cheap damage at a ridiculously good price early on. Heat Shiver should be like pretty blatantly obvious what this is, right? This is a lot of extra damage, and the criteria for filling this out is insanely easy, right? Like basically, we get just 100% of our cold damage gained as extra fire, almost doubling our damage, and we get extra damage on top of that based on a chill effect. We are literally scaling non-damaging ailments. So if I chill them or I shock them, it's at nearly maximum effect because of the amount of increased effect of non-damaging ailments, which is a huge part of why we are an Elementalist, right? Like we have the shock, and the shock will always be super efficient. Another way that we are indeed scaling damage, right? So Elementalist, again, we get Heart of Destruction, gives us just more, gives us convergence, just an insane character overall. Like everything synergizes quite well. Our Doppelgangers, guys, it's a unique piece, right? Which means we can scale it with plus levels, which is a fantastic way to scale up Ice Nova damage. It gives us our physical and chaos resistance, so we don't need it on gear. Again, basically takes care of a majority of our defensive layers. Again, your Amulet, plus levels, all we care about. Life, you don't need the mana cost one, but I really like it. We do need a bunch of Dex on this build, so basically we are Dex starved because of how the tree's done. And you need really good Dex rolls, I believe, for the Cost Breeze, right? So basically, really, really helps out. So does the Malagaros. Not really much else to say about this. All I did was basically just Essence spam it until I got a life roll or a +1 cold, or you can craft it yourself. You don't need one this good. Literally, spell damage is pretty close to +1 cold, to be honest. Either way, right? Vermilion Rings, I've been crafting these all league. Basically, all you're looking for is triple suffix, and then you want to clean up the prefixes with an Ashling, and then just a Crusader Slam. There's a lot of good Crusader Slams, from extra ES to spell damage to damage against shocked enemies, which, hey, we shock them, so we do shock and chill. I think the only one it's not really that great is the total life leached, but we actually use it on this build because we do actually leech life. So again, there's almost no bad slams for a Crusader Slam, but ultimately you are going to want one with a life gain per enemy hit with spells. We do hit with a lot of spells. It's a ridiculously good sustain. It like changes the way the build feels tenfold, and obviously when you have this much HP, it's really, really good, right? So basically, other mandatory part on this is obviously accuracy. 2 tier 1 accuracy rolls if you can get them. I'm telling you, I've been able to buy these for as cheap as 50C, and then fix them up for like maybe 4 divines or something like that. And then basically, I've had good rings out of this the whole league. They're really good, and I've been able to buy them for 5 div already done sometimes. Your boots, really, really easy to craft. Again, you don't even craft them, just buy them, honestly. We have 2 of the lowest rolls possible for the brittle ground that we drop, right? So brittle ground is an integral part of it. You need these exact ones though. You need brittle ground, you need cooldown recovery rate. You can supplement it otherwise, but like not worth it in any way, shape or form. Just get brittle ground, get cooldown recovery. If you want the lowest roll there of 5%, you need at least 16% over here, right? If you get 8% or something like that, you can get a 13% roll over here, right? That's kind of how it dictates. You just need to reach 52% cooldown recovery. Flask effect is great, and flask effect duration is also good. We don't really need it. I just happen to find this one. The big deal here is for me the life rolls. The more life, the better our protective layers are, and the more effective they are. I think this one was great. It was such a good find. It was really cheap too, man. Only like 8 divines. Again, that's in the more expensive version that I have. You guys don't need this. You can obviously bling out the Stygian Vice a bunch. Also, I did it because I had the idea of trying to get like extra stun avoidance and the avoid being shocked in 2 more levels, I can fit in the dual Storm Shroud or whatever it's called, and then I get 100% ailment avoidance as well on top of that, right? So again, that's a defensive layer I don't even have in these videos. That is really, really good. So we have stun avoidance, we have all ailment avoidance in the end. Again, obviously this is for like way further down the tracks, not quite part of the budget version, and I don't even have it yet, so it's not like you can say I've been using it, but all you're after, life roll, movement speed roll, non-damaging ailments crafted on. You can also craft on non-damaging ailments here, but it means you miss out on the non-channeling ailments. Not a big deal, because obviously you get your mana sustain through leech, but again, it's up to you how you guys feel about that. This is what I would aim for in the end. No one's really trying to craft these, but they're fantastic. Again, they were crazy cheap, and I got these for like under a divine. That pretty much goes over all the gear you're actually wearing. Oh, sorry, and then Progenesis. Obviously, it's a big boy thing, right? It's something for the end game. This with the trader, basically, that we have on the tree here, I literally just looked up one that would give me onslaught on kill, and then basically just more movement speed. That's all I have, and then increased movement speed here, right? Because all I care about is movement speed. You can eventually drop this section here, by the way. I actually have like too much. You can drop this section here and get more life again. So we are right near extra life nodes. I believe there's some more life nodes near me somewhere. But anyway, point is I can completely bling out on more life nodes. I think in the end I grab these 3 and this one, and then I'm like well and truly over 6k. You get even more, and I don't even have tier 1 life rolls everywhere, so you can get a lot of HP on this character, especially in 3 levels, and I get like another dual slot, so however defensive I am now, we can get much more defensive if obviously I bothered to sort of actually spend a bit more money and currency on this character. I'm not going to do that because it's mostly just a demo character. It's quite limited in what you can do after this. Like basically the original version, like I said, is about 10 mil damage. We flip this thing up, right? Sorry, oops. Do an end game tree. So like your early game, it's not really much difference, right? Early game, you're at 10. Oops. The gear doesn't really change there. Sorry about that. Basically, you go from like no plus levels to plus levels, and you get up to like 14 mil. If you use the Forbidden Flame Duels, which I'm not really going to recommend, basically you can get even more damage again. You can get way more damage than this, but you'll only go from like 10 mil damage to about sort of 14, 15, and I'd leave it at that, but the amount of HP you can get is really good. We haven't even min-maxed that out yet, but it's really good. You can be a very, very, effective character. We would probably want 2 life gain on hit rings, but basically that should describe most of the gear to you, obviously, as well, right? We want the trader. This is how you get infinite flask sustain on bosses and mapping. Doesn't look like it now. Obviously, it does drop off if we're doing nothing, but as you're mapping, you get flash charges back. And I've got a video showing that basically we permanently sustain flash charges on bosses so long as I'm attacking, right? The trader, it's really good. It also gives us back life charges on our flask, and that basically makes us like super efficient on bosses. So we also have infinite life flask if we do get in danger on top of all the leech. Sublime Vision, really, really good. I want to go over this a little bit more later, but basically all you need to know is this is mandatory. 25% more crit. We already take care of the drawback by using the doppelgangers. Just really, really good. These double prop Watcher's Eyes, we just want the extra attack speed. It's really good. It's crazy cheap. Flash charge on crit is how we get flash charges back while we're bossing. So long as we're spinning, we're getting flash charges back. Only 3 flasks to get them back on. We perma-sustain our flask through this, along with the fact that we don't use our life flask. Again, I've got another fractured chance to be shocked. 2 levels, I'll get these nodes here. That basically means I'm good. You guys will probably end up just using another cluster like this for more brittle effect. I don't really need any more brittle effect. We're sort of over crit capped. Basically gives us no flask reliant and permanent flask for the ones that we do have. So again, we've got so much stuff here that is basically helping our character work overall. But all you guys need to know is, right, we have permanent flask when we need them, right? We're maxing out our movement speed. We get curse resistance from this. We can run all map mods, including reflect, right? Because we're an elementalist. We are permanently shocking. Oh, sorry. One other thing I really want to mention. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop that halfway through. You need a Storm Rider to generate power charges. We always shock through our Ascendancy, right? And then it's being buffed up by our non-damaging ailments, which is why we have so much shock effect, right? But basically, all you need to know is we're always shocking, and we're always chilling because we're cold damage, right? Which means that basically, this Storm Rider is constantly generating our power charges on single target and at super effectiveness, right? So that's the only thing that's really mandatory there, and we want as much Inspired Oppressions as we can get, Astonishing Afflictions and Inspired Oppressions. If you aren't getting enough brittle, just get another one of these. When you've got enough on gear, you can then swap it to whatever Megalomaniac you want. I recommend getting a Surging Vitality just because it's nice, so it's like we can get the occasional bit of health back as we're just moving. Again, not the best. This one's pretty weak, actually. Like, we could get better than this again. You want Feast of Flesh. Feast of Flesh is probably the best node you could get because it gives us more life gain on hit. We want as much as we can. Just really, really good. You can pick whatever you want. There's some cool stuff you can do here. Megalomaniac is a free gem slot, basically, right? Do with that what you will. Or you can just get like another nice jewel, which will give you damage. But essentially, yeah, sorry, we are Infinite Flask. We are permanently sustaining through Life Flask, along with fantastic amounts of Leech. We have like an 8k EHP pool, right? Yeah, what else is there to say, really? Oh, we chill and freeze everything. We have decent damage, and that's basically how we've been able to take on every piece of content in the game, including Ubers, but we don't juice them up. We're not quite at that level, and you still need to dodge. But we can tank Uber slams, which is fucking amazing. Obviously, this is like in the more late game sense, but we can tank big slams. We can kill the Ubers. If I do a good enough job dodging, we have enough damage to push phases. Like, as long as you don't turbo them up or juice them, or like you're not bad at the Eater of Worlds fight. So Eater of Worlds is a pain because obviously as we're moving, we take a lot of tentacle damage. If you take too much of that at once, like by standing still too much, you get wrecked. But again, it's kind of on you as a player to work out when to attack and when not to. And also when we're not leeching, we're basically dying. Alrighty guys, I just want to give my my sort of closing thoughts on this character. We're going to cut the video a little bit short. I mean, there's probably a bunch more I could do, but if you guys want any more information, just come to me on stream, look at the POB, let the POB do a lot of the lifting for me, right? And basically, I think I've explained all the important parts. What I want to discuss now is kind of like, well, one, what's the character for? Basically, it's an all-rounder, right? This thing is not a specialist, it's not particularly great at mapping, it's not particularly great at bossing or anything like that. It does everything really, really well. It is a budget character at the end of the day. We started this thing with like 12 divines, and again, just I have never played a version of Cast on Crit Ice Nova in a long time, right? So we used to be able to get away with it for about 5 exalts or 5 divs. Now it's like, you know, probably 10 to 15 to start this thing, right? To start this thing, and you will be able to do Guardians, you'll be able to do your Crucibles, you'll be able to do all that stuff, and then it's kind of like to get into that Simulacrum, Feared, and Ubers content, you're probably going to have to spend up to, you know, upwards to like 30 to 50, depending on how well you know what you're doing, right? And how lucky you get with some of the crafting processes. Everything on this character so far has been self-crafted, and then it's like, this is undoubtedly the best budget version of Cast on Crit Ice Nova I've played in a long time, including obviously comparing it to the low life Shavs version, which is quite expensive most of the time, and you need really good supplemental pieces like the gloves and that kind of stuff. But I haven't felt this defensive, offensive, and just had so much quality of life on a character. Again, I don't need to reroll map mods. I don't have any of those weaknesses. You know what I mean? Like, it runs all map mods. Fantastic. All the gear was cheap because no one was looking at it. I do have one gripe, and that would be, would I be able to use this in a league start? And I would say the biggest problem I have, right, is possibly not. There is one item which is in very short supply at the start of the game, which is this Sublime Vision, that is very, very easy to control and price fix. So basically, here's what it is, right? This character is undoubtedly one of the best cheap versions of Cast on Crit Ice Nova I can get, and it's actually got fantastic scaling to the point where we can do all content on a ridiculous budget, right? Like, it's Cast on Crit at 30 div doing better than some versions that cost over 100, right? And then even then it's got some fun scaling, more quality of life, better defenses, like so many things going right about it. But once people find out about this stuff, it is very easy, especially at the start of the league, to price fix this gear. Now, I'm you know, obviously I don't want to encourage people to do it, but essentially the Sublime Vision, there might be only 2 or 3 of them in the first week. You know what I mean? Which means that they could be 20 div, hopefully not more than that, right? Like, it's not that good of a build where people should be going hard on it. But basically, you know, if you can pick them up cheap, you will have a very, very cheap, successful character. Like, you won't have any problems on the budget version, right? So if you just get the base version I have, you're killing Guardians, you're doing your Crucibles. The only things you can't really do, again, I would say the Feared will be skill cap, Ubers will be skill cap, and what's the other one? Sim 30 won't even be skill cap. You just kind of can't do it unless you're on a version with life gain on hit. You really, really need that, and you want Progenesis at that point too, right? And like decent life. So I would say, you know, Level the gear with Wintertide. That's all I did. It was fantastic. It was so easy. I leveled with Wintertide. It is a fantastic budget character. It is the best version I've played of budget cast on crit in ages. The downsides are the gear is very easily going to be price fixed, right? And it can be. So I'm never going to promise budget on this thing. It is undoubtedly budget right now. Once you reveal this, it's up to the player base to decide the price after that. I would say it should still stay somewhat cheap. You know what I mean? Because obviously it's like, it doesn't scale very well into the late game. And that is my next criticism is you would need to redo the build entirely because the stuff that works on the budget version, like the scaling, the non-damaging ailment and the brittle boots, all gets replaced later on for things like a mage blood. And then you need to get double, elevated cooldown recovery boots, and then obviously you can change it up as much as you want. But like once you do that swap, the whole build falls apart when it comes to the non-damaging ailment scaling, right? Which means, again, it's a full shuffle of gear. Then you get the option of getting rid of the precision to get more auras. And then obviously the whole build completely changes. So what you do to make it super effective on a budget in the early game is not how you would do it in the late game if you want more damage. So obviously I'll if we get enough traction on this video and it ends up doing really, really well, I'll consider doing hey, where do we go after this? Do we swap back to a cultist? Do we do the low life version? But this character is essentially a budget character to start with and probably one of the best early game CoC Nova characters that you can get on a very good budget as long as people don't screw up the prices. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I explained enough. Any questions, leave them in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Peace out, guys. I'll catch you all later.